All right. So before we even get into anything, whoever is in the chat or watching the show, let us know where you're watching from, because we know that there's a YouTube outage and Twitter's having some issues. So let us know if we popped up in your notification feed or how you found us, because the majority of us don't have access to YouTube unless we go through a whole bunch of hoops. So let us know where you're coming from. But with all of that being said, welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 Pod. See, I don't even remember how to do the intro anymore. It's been so long. Welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 Podcast on the MHRT Network. I'm your host, as always, Mungus Creevy, alongside Cameron Parker and Gage Madrid. Glenn Hauser is struggling to get rid of his constipation, so he's not able to make it onto the show tonight. Luckily, we were able to get Cam in. He's been a little busy with his fire stick, but he was able to pry his hand away and join us on the show today. So I appreciate that. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
You know, hearing that out of context is just...
It's awesome, isn't it?
Everybody's wondering, what the hell are we talking about?
Yeah. But we know.
Yes, we do.
By the way, one of the other places, I don't know if Mike's mentioned, is Facebook. We are going live on the Facebook page of MHRT Network as well.
Because we don't know what's working and what's not right now.
So if you guys are able to comment, maybe through Facebook or possibly even X, maybe, we X, Twitter, we are going live on the MHRT Network Twitter handle, my Twitter handle, and actually we're going live from Gage's Twitter handle too, at Gage Madrid NFL. So hopefully, between the time all this happens and YouTube, it's up and running. It's not like this particular stream's not going to be shown, because it will be shown on YouTube. It just might be a little bit before the comments you actually see aren't going to be technically live at that point.
Yes.
Pretty much. So make sure you head on over, when it's working, to the MHRT Network YouTube page. Hit that like, subscribe, thumbs up, hit that join button. There's 3 different options for the join, and it'll tell you what those are, what the perks are. Also, make sure you head on over to Broncos Syndicate whenever that's working, and that's hosted by Gage Madrid. Hit that like, subscribe, thumbs up, join. It gives you the options on there as well. We would greatly appreciate it. And as always, Glenn has nothing, so don't worry about that. You can't follow him anywhere, nor would you want to. So
that's right. Because exactly. Happy birthday, Mike. Happy birthday.
Yes.
I am a very young 21 now.
You look old for your age.
My wife just laughed at me over in the corner. No,
just a few pieces of gray in that beard, Mike.
It's all from the kids. No, trust me. Mostly the daughters. So we haven't really had a show since the Broncos lost the AFC Championship game. Obviously,
Get away. Get out.
Uh-oh. Get out! Obviously, I don't want to talk about the game because that was a long time ago and it sucked, and I really don't want to. But the big question I have for you, if Bo Nix plays in that game, do we go to the Super Bowl? And to follow that up, do we win the Super Bowl?
Yes and yes.
Yeah,
I think that Bo Nix would have made a massive difference in that AFC Championship game. Once the snow started falling, you needed a quarterback who could run. And Jarrett Stidham was not that dude. He was terrible under pressure, obviously made a couple of boneheaded mistakes in that game. There are just a lot of plays in the championship game where you're like, Bo would have made that play. And again, against Seattle in the Super Bowl, I truly feel like Bo Nix would have fared a lot better than Drake May. He would have made a lot of plays. And lost in the sauce, Sam Darnold in the Seahawks offense, outside of Kenneth Walker, that offense was not good. So I feel like the Broncos would have definitely won the Super Bowl. They easily would have won the AFC Championship game. And it's going to always linger, what if, but what can we do, man? It's in the past now.
It is. I think I'm going to play the safe card and say I don't know if they would have won the Super Bowl, but they undoubtedly would have gone to the Super Bowl. It's abundantly obvious for me. And I will say this. I said it on Mainly Broncos, when I was there, but I was surprised by how many non-Bronco fans came up to me and actually told me, and if Bo Nix was in that game for the AFC Championship game, you guys are on the way to the to the Super Bowl. The amount of people that were actually saying that to me, I thought was honestly kind of impressive, because we kind of figure that, oh, is this sort of bias against the Broncos or that sort of thing? Well, no, they were really kind of smart in their comments, and obviously I was like the lone Broncos person there until Andrew Mason showed up and everything. But it's just when you can use your brain and realize that if Bo Nix was in that game, and knowing the fact that May's legs was the reason why New England won that game, then yes, you could put 2 and 2 together that Bo Nix's legs and probably a little bit of his arm at home would have won them that game. I think the thing that just gets a bit tricky is in that Super Bowl, and knowing the fact that he is going up against the Seattle Seahawks defense, there's twofold with that. He played him obviously last year, roughly the same kind of defense, but also the Seattle Seahawks defense is better, and also Bo Nix is better than he was last year. So it's kind of twofold in that I don't know whether or not it would have been the same, but also too, like, there would have been probably some other factors in that too, which is, maybe J.K. Dobbins actually does play in the Super Bowl, or there's some players that may be coming back that we all maybe didn't expect. So there are some other factors in that. But I'm just going to kind of play the safe card and just say they undoubtedly do make it to that Super Bowl, and I think it most undoubtedly would have been a much, much better game as well.
Oh, yeah. So here's the next question, kind of based around that. Was this the window for the Broncos, or is the window still wide open?
Window's wide open.
Yeah, wide open. You're finally free of the Russell Wilson dead cap. You've got the ability to kind of round out your roster and fill some of the last holes that you have. There's no reason why this team can't be in contention for at least the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, it's open. I mean, it is open for all intents and purposes until Bo Nix hangs up his cleats. Until that closes, then yeah, that's when the Super Bowl window closes. It closes when the Walton Penner Group decides to be poor and not utilize all of its money and assets to build around this football team. That's when their Super Bowl window is poor and it's not even open. At that point, you might as well just hang it up and find a new ownership group at that point. It's just they've got such a good opening right now for their assets, for free agency. I will say this too. I would argue that this kind of loss, for what we argued with the Bills game last year, this was the best possible result they could have had, knowing what's next for this football team, because now we know where things could potentially go from this roster standpoint. I put out a poll, I want to say it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, where it's like, we have a pretty good idea. All the Broncos country has a pretty good idea what the weaknesses of this team is. It's a very good roster, but it's very leaky when it comes to the wide receiver 1, running back 1, tight end 1, those playmakers. It is kind of leaky in that regard. It's just, how can they force themselves to be aggressive to stay with that window and really maintain the fact that they can be in this window for a relatively long time. That's basically what we kind of find ourselves in.
Yeah. So going into all that, we talk about the AFC West, we talk about the teams in the AFC West, we talk about the Broncos window still being wide open for a Super Bowl, and then the Chargers get favored to win the West with Kansas City in second and Denver in third. Really? The Chargers. What have the Chargers ever done to be favored for the West again?
I actually need someone to explain this to me like I'm 5. Like, I legitimately need someone to explain to me how a team went 14-3, and the Chargers, who were 2 wins or 3 wins less than ours, are favorites to win the AFC West. At the very least, consecutive years, like the Chiefs. Do like them below us and then the Broncos. Like, it's just so disrespectful when you don't choose like the team who just won the division, the division title, the AFC West, You know, like, I don't know. And it's just, it boggles the imagination. And it goes to show you, frankly, and I don't mean to go on a mini bunny trail that's going to take this in a lot of ways, but the league has a Sean Payton problem. The league has a legitimate Sean Payton problem that I just think that they are afraid to admit. And I think that, you know, when you get something like this where the Broncos are very obvious, you know, and should be the AFC West people that, you know, everybody should be betting for because they won. No, they decided to go with the Chargers.
Well, I think the Chargers have reason for optimism. Everybody loves Mike McDaniel. The media is gushing over him. Of course, the media is always going to gush over Justin Herbert, but they fail to see the problem that plagues the Chargers every single year. Their roster is amongst the most injured in the NFL year in and year out. That has always been their problem. That always will be their problem. And they fail to show up in the biggest moments. I'm sorry. I will believe it when I see it with the Chargers. Then you've got Kansas City. Their quarterback probably isn't going to be 100% to start the season. Their roster has a lot more holes than the Denver Broncos. And did I mention they've got like $40 million of negative cap that they have to deal with? They've got to clear $40 million of space just to get out of the red. They are not in a good spot right now. This Broncos team has money. They've got the resources to build this team up to an even higher level than they were last year. I don't understand this whatsoever. Denver may have a tougher schedule this upcoming year. Not only does the league have a Sean Payton problem, they also have a Bo Nix problem. Bo Nix was rated by the NFL as the 18th best quarterback to start a game last season. Out of every quarterback who started at least one game, Bo Nix was 18, behind guys like Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones. Absolutely ridiculous. Until the Broncos get respect, I'm going to continue to call out the national media and call out Vegas for this bullshit.
You mean the Kyler Murray that got benched isn't going to be on the Cardinals anymore?
That guy.
The Daniel Jones that forced the Indianapolis Colts to trade 2 first-round picks to an overrated corner.
Yeah. Randy and Broncos, I promise you, we're going to be getting to free agents and trades and whatnot. There's just a whole lot to catch up on. So I promise we'll get there. I think the second most cap space in the AFC West, losing men to the DC Hurts. Broncos have 28 million, 24 million in cap.
30.
They're going to get a lot more once they do restructures and cut some dudes.
I just say 30 right now. It's easy to round up and just say 30 million.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of some of those changes, Jim Leonhard is now the Buffalo Bills defensive coordinator.
Saw that coming.
Yep. Good for him, man. He probably wasn't going to get that opportunity here in Denver. Definitely wasn't with Vance Joseph returning. He came to Denver with the hopes of advancing his coaching career, and he did just that. He improved his stock. It was already at a pretty high level when he came to Denver, but he mostly had college experience. Usually teams like to get a little bit more NFL experience under your belt before they straight up hire you as a coordinator. So good for Jim Leonhard. I'm rooting for him there in Buffalo, and I wish nothing but success for him and his family.
Unless he plays Denver in the playoffs, and then
exactly.
I hope you suck and you're horrible plays calls.
Well, but we are going to see Jim Leonhard as well as Pete Carmichael, who also got hired by the Bills as their offensive coordinator. We are going to see them return to Denver this coming year. The Bills do play in Denver, so that is something that we're going to see.
You know, I will say, I think just the part of it that I think is so important for Jim, and it's the reason why it just seemed fitting that he was going to end up going for some jobs, was he's been picky his entire career. And he has every right to be picky, knowing, you know, being shafted and stuff, starting with Wisconsin. So he wanted to make sure he was going at least to a decent organization, and at least one that comes rather highly favored and, and complimentary, if you will, of the staff he's coming from. And what better compliment is the Bills saying to you as a franchise, the Broncos, than taking some coordinators and some even coaches from your staff? I mean, it basically says that that they really respected the heck out of you, even though you didn't coach necessarily as a defensive coordinator. They respect a great deal of you, and it also comes from Sean Payton himself. I mean, think about how praiseworthy Sean was for him to probably say something to Joe Brady that's like, hey, we were probably really close to actually having this guy be our defensive coordinator. You would be so smart to have him in your building. Because I mean, I think obviously the league, as we said, is a Sean Payton problem, but I think he's a genuine human being. Like, you actually have a sit-down conversation with him, he will make sure that he has these guys coached and ready, and in terms of a decent tree in the National Football League. So they are still rather well respected. And Jim Leonard, even without Sean Payton, had been really well respected in this league. And even from college days, he was going to be getting a job here at some point. You just hope it was Denver.
Yeah. Yep. Jack Kenna, is Peyton going to be calling the plays this year? This goes into the next thing, which is Lombardi was let go, and Davis Webb is the new offensive coordinator. Now, I fully believe Davis Webb is going to be calling plays. And that's just by some of the press conference things, like Sean Payton saying that it's getting hard to get the play calls in on time the older he gets. And there was
driving in the rain.
Driving in the rain. There was a lot of issues with play calling throughout the season. And again, not all of that is on Sean Payton. I get that. Right. But at some point, you get to a point in your career where you're like, okay, it's time for me to hand this off. And I think we've reached that time. Like, it is now time to hand it off.
Yeah. And even if Sean is still involved in the play calling, which I fully expect him to be, you just need a new voice on the headset. You need somebody who can transmit the message a little bit quicker, basically, because that's been the number one issue. Be it indecisiveness from Sean, or he's admitted it's literally hard for him to read the play sheet. You see him with those readers on the sideline sometimes. So that's something that you have to contend with. And I think Sean Payton has realized as he gets older, it might be better for somebody else to actually convey the play call, be in the headset, and get all that information in. I do believe he's going to give Davis Webb freedom to call what he wants. But if there's a play call that Sean doesn't like, or if there's a certain situation where Sean wants a specific play called, he's going to get that specific play called. I can guarantee you that. Sean's not completely taking his finger off of this, but he is going to let Davis Webb cook. I'm very confident in that. That's the main reason why Davis Webb is coming back here. He had other opportunities to go to other teams and potentially be their offensive coordinator, their play calling offensive coordinator, and he chose to come here. And I think Sean Payton basically told him, all right, dude, I'm willing to give you the play calling duties because I covet you and I value you that much. I think you're that critical to the development of our quarterback and the development of our offense as a whole. So Davis Webb is going to provide some juice. He's going to provide some new ideas, especially in the passing game, him being a former quarterback. I still want the Broncos to go out and potentially hire a new run game coordinator. That has been something I've wanted for a long time. The run game, from a schematic perspective, I think has some shortcomings, and I want that to be fixed. So that's something I still want to see, but I'm very excited for Davis Webb and the new life he's going to inject into this offense.
Yeah, and sorry, Cam, don't mean to cut you off. I just want to get this point out. That's the majority of NFL head coaches do that, right? Like, their offensive coordinator will call plays, defensive coordinator call plays, but then the head coach has the right to, on certain situations, like a 4th and 1 or, a 2-minute drill or whatever, where they'll be like, no, we're not doing that. We're doing this. That's how the majority of, at least I would say, of teams run, except for like the Sean McVays or the Mike McDaniels or the Matt LaFleur's, like those guys.
Yeah, and it's important to have the conversation because there's two differing ideas, right? Would it have been enticing for him to go back to Buffalo, Davis Webb? Would it have been enticing for him to go back to Buffalo, a place that he's been to, knows Josh Allen quite well? But but he may not have been able to call plays, but he's still around Josh Allen, an MVP quarterback. Would have been pretty beneficial there. Absolutely. Would have been very beneficial to be under Jesse Minter and actually work with Lamar Jackson, an MVP candidate as well. Absolutely. And so I think that there's this very differing idea where you have calling plays and also designing designing a whole new offense. We're not going to get that. We're not going to get like a designing of a whole offense, but it's just going to be calling plays. Now, I think what will be interesting is the extensions of these plays that we see. Like, yes, the Evan Ingram play that we saw in preseason that was very successful that we ended up seeing at times in the regular season. We could see some extensions off of that. So I think that's just the side of this too, that it's just he's going to call plays. And the other side of this too is this is also going to allow Sean Payton, who maybe is at a crossroads of his career, to where it's like, you know what? I do love what I do as a play caller. And to be perfectly clear, I never had any issues with his play calling, just some certain things in game management and stuff like that, to where it's like, I had some issues with that, but I never really had issues with his play calling. It was just some, game management stuff. And so the fact that he's giving up play calling duties to Webb is going to allow him to be that Mike Vrabel, a coach he saw in the AFC Championship game, one of the best ever do it. And Sean is a great game manager. This is going to allow him to be that ultimate game manager of the defensive side of the ball, the offensive side of the ball, the special team side of the ball, a guy who loves dipping his toes in every single aspect of his coaching staff. This is going to allow him to do that. I think what is scary, obviously, is what every Bronco fan assumes, and that's, Bo and this offense is going to have a really good year, and we're back to square one with Davis Webb getting a head coaching gig, or even an offensive coordinator gig, which, yeah, this is definitely something you want to consider. And again, it's still praise to Webb. It's still praise to the development under Sean Payton. But I will ask this. There were 10 jobs. There were 10 jobs in this head coaching cycle. I don't know what the future is going to hold for other head coaching cycles, but I am very curious to see, yeah, he's here for offensive play calling, but you also have to ask yourself the other elephant in the room. And that is this also a head coaching and waiting type of situation with Davis Webb? Because 10 coaching jobs, 2 of which were MVP candidates, 2 of which were very, very, very good jobs, frankly. Even before Brady, he was interviewed for the head coaching job with the Bills. Didn't get an opportunity there, but he ended up even being interviewed, if you will, for the offensive coordinator job. Didn't go there. Ravens, offensive coordinator job. I think they might have interviewed him for head coach. They ended up going with Jesse Minter. He had opportunities. Even the Giants, who went with John Harbaugh, he could have gone there as an offensive coordinator. Ended up turning it down. There's no guarantee we have 10 jobs this upcoming cycle after the 2026 season. So that is something I at least would, file away, is just this idea that at 30 years old, who's a relatively young coach still in this league, that Davis Webb might actually be the offensive coordinator for the Broncos at least in a couple of years, to maybe we start to see things a little bit when it comes to maybe this transition, changing of the guard a little bit, of not just to play calls of that, allowing Sean to get a lot of play calls, but this opportunity that maybe Davis Webb actually saw this in writing, mind you, not a handshake, of just something down the line that's like, you know what? I love being here.
Yeah, and it sucks for Davis Webb that he didn't get a head coaching position.
1,000%.
But at the same time, it doesn't suck for us. But with the amount of interviews that he had and how fast jobs were filling in, he was basically left with 3 jobs, and that's the 3 jobs you didn't want. No offense, Jack Kenna, but the Cardinals,
exactly.
The Browns, and the Raiders. Those are jobs that you don't want.
Yep.
I mean,
number one,
you've got a messed up GM and owner in Arizona. You've got a messed up, beyond messed up, front office GM owner in Cleveland. And then with Raiders, you're looking at a complete teardown and build up. And you potentially are going to be losing your best player in Max Crosby. Don't know yet. But those are 3 very, very difficult situations to step into.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of makes sense that Davis Webb took his name out of the
It
run.
really does. Like when you Yeah.
I wanted to touch back on Cam's original point here about Davis Webb potentially being a head coach in the waiting. I don't exactly see it that way because I think Sean Payton still has a lot left in the tank. I think we still have Sean for 10 years if we want him. Like, he has been an excellent coach for this team. He has turned our culture around. He
1,000%.
has turned us from a dumpster fire, bottom of the barrel organization to the premier organization that we know and expect the Denver Broncos to be. So I don't want to lose that. I love Davis Webb, and I'm excited to see what he does as our offensive coordinator, but I am in no hurry to move on from Sean Payton. I want to make that perfectly clear. Another thing I wanted to touch on is what fans should realistically expect from Davis Webb, what's going to change, what's going to stay the same, because people in Denver are frustrated with the amount of screens that Sean Payton calls. I've defended these screens a lot on my channel. I believe that these screens are really good plays if they're used correctly, if you have a run game to support them, and if you have the personnel to run them. I don't think Denver has had the personnel to run these screens from a blocking perspective. Getting little Jordan Humphrey back did help that significantly. He's an excellent blocker on these screens, but from the tight end position, Denver has not had a consistent enough blocker. They don't have a guy who they can rotate in, and you don't know, is he going to be a pass-catching threat or is he going to be a blocker? They had Evan Ingram, who was the receiver last year, and then they had Adam Troutman, who was more the inline blocking tight end. You kind of knew what you were getting from both of those players. It all boils down to Denver not having a joker-type player at the tight end position. It limits what you can do with some of these play calls, including the screens, and it allows the defense to key in on what you're doing. So I think that once Denver gets better personnel, these plays are going to be a lot more effective, and the screens might be a little bit more sparingly used because they're not going to have to make up for a lack of a run game. So that's something I don't think is going to change super drastically. The screens that are called, the drop back passing concepts, I imagine, are going to be the same. I want to see some tweaks in the run game. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but this isn't going to be a drastic, dramatic schematic change. There's still going to be the same plays that are called.
The only thing I will say that's going to be a drastic change from a very pro Bo Nix and offensive huddle perspective is when you keep Davis Webb along, the verbiage will be shortened.
Mm-hmm.
The verbiage will be shortened so that you have opportunities to maybe limit the amount of substitutions that you can have, or you have enough time due to the play clock to have these substitutions. That's probably one of the biggest things. It's just that the verbiage, of actually being a 75-page essay is actually just a simple 5-page essay that you can worry about. And I think that for Bo, that's going to be extra beneficial. And then obviously having him in the room, Logan Kilgore in the room, just anything that just is simply from a continuity side of things is the best of both worlds. And when you can have that, the development from a quarterback perspective, or even Bo Nix's perspective, who, as we know, and we documented it before Sean Payton, is that he's had multiple different coaches his entire career before Sean. And so this just kind of keeps that continuity together, keeps all of that together. And I think that we do see a little bit of a much different Bo, in a sense that I think you'll see a little bit more of an explosive Bo, because you'll actually get a chance to see things a little bit more ad-lib at times with his legs, a little bit more of some of that Josh Allen type of stuff we have been hearing at times from him. So I think you'll see a little bit more of what Dave Logan kind of calls some backstreet football.
Yeah. Jack Kenna wants to know, if Webb does very well, does Denver move off Payton to have Webb as head coach or face losing a young guy? No, I think if he does well, they're going to lose him. I still am in the firm belief that if or when Denver wins another Super Bowl, the retirement chatter will start with Sean Payton.
Maybe.
Just because at that point, is there that much more to prove? You got 2 Super Bowls under your belt. You've done it with 2 different teams. You drafted a rookie quarterback. got him as a top 10 quarterback. I mean, is there a whole lot left to do? I'm not saying he will, but let's say Denver wins the Super Bowl next year. That's an if, right? Let's say they win it next year. I think that there's questions of whether or not Sean Payton would consider retiring.
Sean's addicted to this. He's said it multiple times. He loves this. This is his main purpose in life, is to be a coach. He loves winning, and I think getting another Super Bowl would just fuel him even more to go out there and do it again. Because remember, he only got one Super Bowl in New Orleans. I think he wants to get at least 2 here in Denver. And he's got the quarterback that he knows could get him to multiple championships.
The other side of this, too, is it's a little bit easier to find an offensive coordinator. And I think that if we see an offense that explodes and Davis Webb goes off and he's an offensive coordinator somewhere else, or he's a head coach somewhere else, then he's going to at least have the opportunity to be that head coach. But also, he created a situation where Bo Nix is going to end up being not just a dream free agency job for these free agents, it'll be a dream job for some offensive coordinators to work with Bo. And so it'll be a little bit easier knowing the fact that Sean, due to his grace, can be able to actually give out the play calling duties for him, for this new offensive coordinator. Because I would have a hard time, believing the fact that Sean would take back some of the play calling duties if he knew that what he saw with Davis Webb and succeeding, and as much as it succeeded, it would be a hard time for him to be like, man, would I want to go back to that, knowing the fact what I just witnessed this year, because he does love it so much. So it's just a little bit easier for it to go that way. But it still begs the question. He's 30 years old. Webb is 30 years old, as I said, and I don't know what those jobs are going to entail next year.
Yeah, I think long-term at the offensive coordinator position, you find somebody similar to Josh McDaniels, where he's a failed head coach. You know he's not going to get poached for a head coaching job anytime soon, and you can have him develop that relationship long-term. I hate Josh McDaniels. I think he is a horrible person, an absolute fucking snake, but the dude can call an offense. You got to give credit where it's due. If Denver can find a failed head coach that could come in and be our offensive coordinator long-term, I'd be all for it. Realistically, this is a 1 year, an extra year basically for Davis Webb. So I'm just happy we have him for this year. And I think having him here is going to give us a great chance to maximize this window and get us a Super Bowl.
Yeah. So we'll get into talking about the roster because there are some things that are going to need to be changed. Some new players coming in, old players going out. And Randy brings up talking about tight ends, how you must use them in the offense, right? And I was listening to something that Cody Rourke put out. And I agree. Like it does seem like the tight ends were misused a lot this year. Mm-hmm. He was talking about how 11 personnel was used 50% of the plays of the time, which is 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. Yep. And then 12 personnel, which is 1 running back, 2 tight ends, was only used 15% of the time. And when you have like an Evan Ingram, we're not expecting Evan Ingram to go out there and block his face off. He's a guy that's going to go out there that could almost play the slot as a wide receiver, and he's going to catch the ball. Problem is that he had some dropsy problems. So
wasn't the only one.
That kind of leads us to the question of what now? So I have 4 positions that I feel are the most important for the Broncos. You guys can list yours as well. And then we'll kind of go into a free agent player we're looking at. So I have tight end, I have running back, I have wide receiver, and I have inside linebacker. Now, the big question is, Cam, and this came out from Mike Kliss, apparently the Broncos are prioritizing re-signing Alex Singlenut to the Denver Broncos.
And Justin Sternad too. Like he did them.
But Sternad's not as fun to say as Singlenut. That's why I went with that one.
And I would be a lot more content with bringing back Justin Sternad at this point in time. He's younger. He's played really well these past couple of years, especially in 2025. I thought that he took those next steps forward in his run defense, his coverage. It all looked really solid. So if we're going to pay somebody, I'd like it to be him. As far as Singleton is concerned, he's a warrior. He's a badass. What he did last year was incredible. But I have to look at this from a pure football evaluation standpoint. Why the hell are you bringing back a linebacker who can't cover?
Right.
He doesn't have the speed. His legs are gone. He can't keep up with running backs. He can't keep up with tight ends. He's a liability in coverage. He's your defensive captain. He's your defensive play caller. I get all of that. He's still solid in run defense, but you need linebackers who can cover. And if you don't have linebackers who can cover, your defense isn't going to reach maximum potential. I strongly disagree with this, and quite frankly, I'm hoping that Kliss isn't correct here.
Yeah, and you and I are in the same boat, and because I made mention of it because of the fact that, like he mentioned, it's the top priority. There's a difference when you say the top priority and a top priority, because if you're saying the top priority, that implies something greater, which is like a complete rebrand of the linebacker room, which includes Dre Greenlaw, right? And maybe they do move on from Greenlaw, but I think Singleton's a free agent, Sternad's a free agent. Like, you know, Drew Sanders is barely healthy. Karen Reed, Lavelle Bailey, maybe there's that P word potential.
Yeah,
they're very unproven. They are very unproven still. And so when you look at the room, you're still forced to spend money, whether you're going to be keeping Dre Greenlaw or not. You're going to be forced to maybe spending a little bit more money when it comes to that linebacker position next to Dre Greenlaw. It just cannot be Alex Singleton or even Justin Sternad. I'm sorry, it can't. Justin Sternad kind of placed himself into the situation a little bit better, but placed himself in the situation that is just like PJ Locke a couple years ago, where PJ Locke earned himself a raise. He didn't play up to it, unfortunately, after that, but he, at least in that year that he had, played himself up to the raise. Sternad at least had shown that he at least has earned himself a raise. Frankly, he has earned himself a raise and performance to where he could play elsewhere, not here. And I think also, too, is when you look at the linebacking core and the linebacking position group that it actually has in free agency and even this draft, Denver can actually revamp its linebacking core even with Greenlaw on this roster. Like, you can have Greenlaw here, move on from Alex Singleton, move on from Justin Sternad, move on from Karen Reed, move on from Lavelle Bailey, and just completely revamp your linebacker room if you wanted to, with some of these off-ball linebackers that you can draft in this draft, or even in free agency, because this free agency and draft class is very, very deep when it comes to the linebacking course. So I'm hoping it also isn't just the top priority, because the moment it's also the top priority is the moment you also are blinded enough to not focus on the offensive side of the ball, which is the focus of this Denver Broncos offseason. I think it's wrong when you even look at it from the Singleton perspective, just because, he made some plays. He made some coverage plays here and there in some games. But we are looking at a whole product. We're looking at a whole product, and Singleton was garbage on wheel routes, coverage plays, everything that ended up being a big mistake on this defense was mostly Alex Singleton.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, man. And I really don't understand why this team is getting complacent at that position. And it scares me, because complacency is the number one enemy of a winning football team. They need to get better at that position. And when it comes to Dre Greenlaw, that's going to be a tough conversation. I'm leaning towards moving on from Greenlaw because the injuries are just a big concern. You had the suspension last year, which, BS or not, it still cost him time on the field and ultimately did cost his team there. So I just feel like Dre Greenlaw, that signing didn't work out. You need to cut your losses there. It's kind of the sunk cost fallacy. You have the resources to rebuild this linebacker room completely in free agency in the draft. I love this linebacker draft class just at initial glance. I think there are a lot of talented players there. And in free agency, yes, you got Devin Lloyd. I don't know if he's going to be available or if the Broncos are going to want to pay him as much as he's going to get paid. But even outside of Devin Lloyd, there are some good free agent linebackers who are available. Why are you wasting resources on a guy who you know is going to be a liability? It just does not make any sense. I'm going to rant further about this in a Broncos Syndicate video, so I'm going to reserve a little bit more of my thoughts for that. But yeah, it doesn't make sense.
So, Mike, I have to ask you, Mike, when you're because I at least I can't speak for Gage but the positions you listed are undoubtedly like my positions of need. Is that your order on priority? Okay.
No.
That
was just the.
How would you rank them? How would you rank them? So then, if you were to go based off of
running back first,
okay,
and then tight end, then inside linebacker, then wide receiver. That's how I'd rank it. And like when you look at Drake Greenlaw is still under contract. Like he's not going anywhere right now. He's not free agent. He's clear. Yeah. And when you compare Drake Greenlaw to Alex Singleton, it's not even close. Like the talent that Drake Greenlaw has in both run stopping and in pass coverage is way over Alex Singleton. But the best ability is availability, and Drake Greenlaw was hurt. He was suspended. You also have to remember, and Drake Greenlaw said it, like, this is the most complex defense he's ever played in. So it's going to take some time for him to get acclimated. And if he's hurt and he's suspended and he's not playing, that's going to take even longer. Now, that doesn't excuse anything, right? Like, there were still some injury problems. But if I have to choose between Drake Greenlaw and Alex Singleton, I'm going Greenlaw all day. And then my pick at linebacker to replace Singleton is Jermaine Pratt.
That's not a bad one.
His rankings as far as run stoppage and coverage is pretty close. He's still, he's upper 20s. He's not in his 30s yet, but he's going to be cheaper than a lot of the like big name linebackers, and he's a good fit.
Let me just put it this way. I'd prefer Pratt over Devin Lloyd.
Would you prefer Pratt over Singleton?
Well, yeah.
I prefer Sternad over Singleton. I prefer Drew Sanders over Singleton. I prefer Lavelle Bailey and Jordan Turner over Singleton.
Yeah. And again, this isn't ruling out any draft picks, right? Like, we don't know who they're going to draft. I'm just going to assume, based off of how they've done draft picks in the last 3 years, that we're probably not going to get a lot of production out of the rookie the first year, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking free agency's got to be where we got to get it.
There are some linebackers who you might get some early production from, like Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech. He's an early draft darling, man. Everybody loves him. And I think Rodriguez could come in and be a day one starter for you. I wanted to give my thoughts on positions of need in order. I would say number one, tight end, and a very specific kind of tight end, a two-way tight end who can play in line and in the slot, a David Njoku, somebody like that. I would love David Njoku here in Denver.
Njoku's on my list.
Yeah, he's definitely towards the top of my list. Cade Otton would also be a fantastic fit. I saw Landon talking about Otton a little bit earlier. Love it. You just need somebody to be an inline tight end for you. So wide receiver, definitely.
Hold on. Let me get your thoughts on Kyle Pitts then.
Okay, Kyle Pitts is interesting. My second position of need is wide receiver. And I've been wanting to do this for years. Kyle Pitts is not a tight end. He can't play in line. He's got the same problem as Evan Ingram. If you moved him full-time to X wide receiver, he could be a superstar. Or even as a big slot, which basically is how Atlanta uses him. I think that he could basically be your upgraded version of Evan Ingram, but you still need a real inline tight end if you get Kyle Pitts.
Okay.
But wide receiver is number 2. You definitely need a number 1 receiver. You need somebody who can be a difference maker on critical must-have-it downs, somebody who isn't going to drop the ball like Cortland Sutton in a lot of key moments last year. Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, everybody had the dropsies in that wide receiver room. Even Pat Bryant had drops at various points throughout the year. So I think wide receiver is definitely number 2. Running back is number 3. You need an RB1. And is that through free agency or the draft? I really don't know. Probably free agency because you have guys like Breece Hall, Tyler Algier, Rico Dowdle, Travis Etienne. It's kind of pick of the litter type situation there for running backs in free agency. And then interior defensive line. I think that we could probably use another body there because JFN, we don't know what's going to happen. Is he going to return or not? And so I think you do have to think about that. Potentially a big nose tackle. That's something I've been wanting for a long time, like a 330-plus pound nose tackle or a new defensive end. Inuwazurike might be in line to get some more snaps next year. At bare minimum, you're going to need a rotational guy. And then inside linebacker, that unit could use a complete facelift as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and listen, in Madden, which is completely realistic, I was able to make a trade for Jalen Carter. So you never know.
Yeah, of course, everyone would love to have Jalen Carter.
It only cost me like 2 first-round picks, a couple seconds, and a player. It's fine.
Yeah,
that sounds about right, actually. That sounds like a realistic package if they were to ever trade him, but they won't.
Yeah, so I think for me, running back's number 1. Running back is number 1 in my opinion. Tight end is 2. But I think inside linebacker is 3 and wide receiver is 4 and 5 is nose tackle. And so I think that it's one where, as I said earlier, they need dire needs for, playmakers. They need dire needs for playmakers of wide receiver 1, tight end 1, and everything. But it's just the wide receiver position is so hard to predict because I need it to come out of their mouth that it's just end up being like, like we are actually in dire need of a wide receiver 1, right? Like, because they do have a pretty decent room. It's just they really need that top shelf player that can come across and really, be that type of dominant guy. But I think that the running back side of things is one where if they had a dominant running game, a healthy J.K. Dobbins, or even a Breece Hall in that game against the New England Patriots or that AFC Championship game, they go to the Super Bowl. They go to the Super Bowl. And so I think that for me, it has to be the running game. And is it a pipe dream? Yeah, I think it's very much like a pipe dream. But I am of the opinion that I want the best room possible.
Yes.
I want the best room possible. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you might be able to wiggle out a chance where J.K. Dobbins signs again around May, June, and you sign Breece Hall, whoever, Tyler Algier, whoever, the back that you desperately wanted in week 1 of the first wave of free agency, and then you roll with your 2 backs, and then your actual starting running backs that you roll with in your 53-man roster. It's going to hurt a lot of Bronco fans to say this. No Jaleel McLaughlin and no Tyler Bidet. I'm sorry. We need the best type of room possible. And if you can have a room of RJ Harvey, Breece Hall, and a J.K. Dobbins which can maximize that workload. And I think that J.K. is at the point of his career where he's a top 10 running back when he's healthy, but it's that latter point when he's healthy. And so J.K. has to come to the understanding that I was so good here in Denver. I'm in a Super Bowl win. I want to at least, be a part of a team that can be able to succeed and maximize the best part of it for when I'm in that game. And at this point of his career, I think that like at that point, your number one running back ends up being the guy you sign, which is Breece Hall, but you piggyback off of Harvey and everything like that. So I just think that when you go off of it, the running game is going to be your biggest friend. And then the tight end. and then the tight end. I think there's a few areas where there's a few position groups that could frankly be remade in this entire offseason, and it's running back, it could be linebacker, and it also could be tight end. Because there are decisions that need to be made on Dre Greenlaw and Evan Ingram. If they move on from both of them, you're talking about a completely new room. Because if you are talking about moving on from Evan Ingram, Kyle Pitts makes sense. If you're moving on from Evan Ingram, Isaiah Likely makes sense.
Yes.
If you're moving on from Evan Ingram, then maybe Eli Stowers might actually make some sense here in the draft. But I just see a world where if they also want the best tight end room available, I have a suspicion that they probably want Ingram to stay one more year just to see what they can be able to do with Davis Webb. So go get Evan Ingram and go get the younger option at tight end. Go get Cade Otton. Go get Cade Otton that can be your inline tight end. Because I just have a hard time, and I'm not saying no. The guys like Njoku and Goddard and stuff like that. It's just you're still bringing in like a 30-year-old, tight end and everything still to that room with Evan Ingram, who's also in his 30s. So if you're able to, if you're able to bring in someone like Cade Otton, you will have a young inline two-way type of tight end that could be able to stretch the field both inline and out wide between he and Evan Ingram. And you also end up having a room with Evan Ingram where you can just not be tipped one way or another. The Troutman's in the game, Evans in the game. We know exactly what this is doing, which is exactly the problem that the Patriots ran into. So I want the best room possible when it comes to all of these rooms, and I think you can do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I completely agree. And I think as far as, Adam Troutman is concerned, that's going to be a real interesting one. Do you bring him back? Do you move on from him? I've made my thoughts clear on Adam Troutman. I think he's the definition of mid. There isn't much that he does, particularly at a high level. He's an okay blocker. He's an okay receiver, but you need a true difference maker at that position. You just need somebody who can be a dynamic threat, and you don't know if he's going to be in there to receive or if he's going to be in there to block.
So we've talked inside linebacker, at least I did, Jermaine Pratt's who I would like to have there, tight end and Njoku. So then you get running back and wide receiver, and this one could potentially be big. Now, obviously, running back, everybody's going to be gunning for Kenneth Walker. I don't think he leaves Seattle. You would
$75 million cash.
As a Seahawks fan, you wouldn't think you'd be pissed if they let the Super Bowl MVP go, right? But if he does become available, obviously I want Kenneth Walker on the Broncos.
Yep.
If not, Breece Hall, Tyler Algier, those are the guys I was kind of looking at. As far as wide receiver goes, Wan'Dale Robinson. He's the guy I want. He's going to be a little spendy, but I think he'd be perfect at the slot, right? But Wan'Dale Robinson had his first 1,000-yard season, basically carried that Giants offense once Malik Neighbors went out.
Yeah.
And Scadaboo went out. But I think Wan'Dale Robinson would be awesome. He's still young. He would fit into the room. But I also have two – I think so. I also have two trades that I would like to see happen. One is Cortland Sutton. He has value. He is a good number 2 wide receiver on any other team. I think you can get some draft capital for him. The other one, and this one might get me in trouble, is Riley Moss. And the reason I said it's nothing against Riley Moss. I love Riley Moss. But you also have Chris Abrams-Drain behind him. You got Jahdae Barron behind him. You still have Pat Surtain on the team. You still have Jaquan McMillan there. There's so many options that you have at corner. And with Riley Moss being honestly one of the best corners in the league this year, he has draft capital as far as trading him.
Value.
And so for me, it's, you trade Cortland Sutton, you move Pat Bryant over to where Sutton was. Now you got Pat Bryant, you got Marvin Mims, you got Troy Franklin, you throw in Wan'Dale Robinson. Hallelujah. I'm creaming in my pants a little bit. I love that. It's awesome, right? And
But
now you've got all these younger guys, and Riley Moss obviously isn't an old guy, but you have these other guys that are behind Riley Moss. And Chris Abrams-Drain came in and filled in. He played well. Jahdae Barron did too. Wasn't great, but he played well.
Barron played better than Drain, personally.
Agreed.
Yes.
And I like Drain.
Yeah.
I like what Jeff points out here, and that's a big thing.
Yep.
There's a lot of dead money associated with Sutton. If you were going to move on from him, then you wouldn't have extended him last year. The team extended him last year. That means they are committed to him long term. And as a number 2 receiver, I'm okay with that. I saw a trade that could be intriguing.
Is this
Riley Moss
Yeah.
and a second-round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles in exchange
A.J.
for A.J. Brown and a 4th.
Oh,
Yep.
you saw 4th? I saw 5th.
I saw 4th. I'll take a 5th too, quite frankly. I'd be okay with that. I love Riley, but he is in a contract year, and as of right now, he hasn't earned an extension. So maybe you do think about moving on from him with Jahdae Barron being there, with Chris Abrams-Drain being there. That is something to definitely think about. And A.J. Brown, I know that he's going to have a lot of controversy. If you give him the ball, he's going to shut up. He's not going to bitch if he has the ball in his hands. And if you're winning football games, he's generally not going to bitch. Hopefully Denver does both of those things. That way he doesn't bitch. And the Philadelphia Eagles won a Super Bowl despite his bitching. As long as he contributes, I'm okay with that. We know that A.J. Brown can be an excellent possession wide receiver. He can go up and get those 50-50 balls. He can come down with contested catches. So for me, I'm all for it. And if it only takes that to get him, I think it's worth it. You're getting a draft pick back. Riley Moss, you're probably not going to pay him, so you get something in return there, and you move on from Riley Moss there, and you bring in A.J. Brown. I can totally see that. I don't think Sutton's going anywhere, but at the end of the day, you really do need somebody. I do think that a Z or a slot receiver could be in play here. Alec Pierce is a big-time name for me. I just think that the Indianapolis Colts are going to franchise tag him. They know how valuable he is to that offense.
Yep.
Jalen Waddle, he could definitely play Z for you, but is he really a number 1 receiver? I don't think he is. I think he's a high-end number 2. And
I mean, Tyreek Hill can jump on one leg down the field faster than most people can.
no, definitely not. All the off-the-field drama. I made a video about this yesterday. I'm not touching Tyreek Hill with a 20-foot pole.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, where you're at in the draft, you're probably not going to land an elite wide receiver, and you're not going to be able to trade for one realistically. Justin Jefferson's not available. As much noise as he makes, as much as he might want out of Minnesota, they're not going to oblige. There's no scenario where the Minnesota Vikings are better with Justin Jefferson not on their roster. They're not trading him. As much as we all love him, it's not going to happen. So realistically, Denver needs to focus their attention on some of these mid-tier options that might not be everybody's favorite, but that's ultimately the direction I think they're going to go at wide receiver.
But I at least from where I sit right now, I think there's a wide receiver option that is my favorite wide receiver option for pick 30. That's if they stay there. Whether that changes from now till April is anyone's guess, but Omar Cooper is my current pick for pick 30 right now. But I just think that for AJ Brown, I've kind of come around on AJ Brown, and I think that no, I would not. For one, he got T Higgins. Well, maybe if T Higgins is like a variant off of then maybe I can actually do something. But no, I just think that but they already signed T Higgins to the contract.
Okay, we have permission. We can do it now.
But I just think for AJ, it's like I've kind of come around on the idea where if you were to ask me what personality would I rather take an AJ Brown or a George Pickens, I'm taking AJ Brown, because AJ Brown's frustration was just simply with the offensive coordinator and everything that ended up being run in that system, and at times the quarterback. You know,
Yeah.
like
I think Jalen Hurts is part of the problem too.
That
Not
was
that he's not a
definitely
good
part of the
quarterback,
issue.
but Jalen Hurts is definitely overrated.
to a certain degree, but it's like, but it's still like Pickens, there's a larger headache to deal with, which is him going out and gambling the night before a Raiders game, with CeeDee Lamb and them getting benched for 2 or 3 jobs.
I mean, it's the
Two
Raiders. Are you worried about it?
2 or 3 quarters. I mean, but I just think that, like, when you look at it from the standpoint, it seems realistic that AJ Brown could actually work. So I've kind of come around on this whole AJ Brown idea, and I think that for Waddle, I am very intrigued by this because you're going to have the Tua release here at some point. That's going to be a lot of dead cap. They already have some dead cap that's already on the books with some of these other moves that they've already made. They probably are going to be extending Devon Achane here at some point. He's a free agent here in 2027. File that one away. But like he's going to end up being extended. Then you got Jalen Waddle, right? Like you got Jalen Waddle, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to be restructured there, because if he's restructured there, that means he's going to stay there. So I don't see necessarily that. So I really think that in order for him to restructure, it would have to be the team that he wants to be traded to. And we know the team he wants to be traded to is in Denver. And so I have a really interesting curiosity about, like, I wonder how they revisit this Jalen Waddle idea. And I am very fascinated by the Wan'Dale Robinson type of situation. I really am, because there is the connection to Davis Webb. Ignore my whole Husker, bias and whatever. But like, but there's a connection to Davis Webb. I mean, he had been with Davis Webb for a couple years there with the Giants, and where I do have a bit of some trepidation when it comes to Wan'Dale Robinson is the Marvin Mims dilemma. And it's the same dilemma that I actually have with a free agent who's on the free agent market, who makes a little bit of some sense from a schematic standpoint. And I talked about him last year, and that's Deebo Samuel. Like, and so like it's the same. It's the same.
Are you comparing him to Mims, or?
I'm talking about how they could use Wan'Dale, and also how they can use Deebo in certain situations. Deebo is a little bit more of you can use him in running back sets, pure running back sets. Wan'Dale is just, if we want to be able to use him in a slot receiver, maybe at times give him some carries just to kind of, be some flashiness, if you will, in the offense. They can do that. But I think that Wan'Dale
plays Z too.
Yeah, but Wan'Dale is one where I think this is where it's hard, because then it's the Marvin Mims question. He does something, Wan'Dale, at this point in his career, he does something that Marvin Mims has not shown at this point in his career, or at least on a consistent game-by-game basis. And that is, he can actually win games for you. Like, he can actually win games for you from the slot. And I think that's a misconception at times for players in the slot. They may not be your wide receiver one, but to a quarterback, they might be viewed as your wide receiver one, because that's your reliable option that you want on, in terms of your third down. So I also just have a bit of some concern, because it's a slot receiver, and you'll be paying him a little bit more on the high end of maybe 20 mil. Rashid Shaheed is another one, though.
Gimme.
I think Rashid Shaheed would be the one that I would, if there's going to be any betting war, I would want it between the Raiders and the Broncos, or the Seahawks.
Gimme now.
And I would sign Shaheed, so he's not a Raider.
So I'm willing to dump Marvin Mims for Rashid Shaheed. I'm not even joking. Rashid Shaheed is so much better. He's faster. He is a dynamic player. And if you want to open up this deep passing game, you get Bo Nix or Rashid Shaheed, man. Holy shit.
Do you consider Wan'Dale Robinson better than Marvin Mims?
At this point, yes, absolutely.
As a wide receiver, yes.
So let's say that the dream is to sign Wan'Dale Robinson and Rashid Shaheed. Let's get them both. Why not?
Well, okay.
No,
I could see it.
Positionally,
Shaheed could be more of your outside Z, and then you could have Robinson as more of your slot guy. I could see that.
I don't know. It just seems a bit redundant. The only thing that Shaheed would the only thing that Shaheed would offer you is the special teams value, which Wandell clearly had shown in his career in college, but at this point in the NFL, it's they moved on.
And let's say that Rashid Shaheed isn't a thing and that Wandale Robinson is, right? I think at that point, Wandale Robinson is the guy that you have on the field for the offense, and Marvin Mims is more of your special teams ace. At that point.
Which to a certain degree, and I think we had this conversation earlier, I'm honestly okay signing Marvin Mims to an extension, even though he's clearly shown to be a special teams ace only. He's so valuable on special teams that I actually, at this point, I don't want to get him off of there. Like, that's the thing. It's like, he's so valuable there. And so it's one where it's like, you sign Shaheed, you can pick and choose and almost make your kickoff team or punt return team dynamic to where if you really are a smart special teams coordinator, you can put Shaheed back there and Mims back there and make your punt and make the punter actually kick to both of them, And so it's just like, you can be a little bit creative, I guess, in how you wanted to do that if you do end up having Rashid Shaheed. But it's just like with Wandale, it's a little bit more like, hey, you have Marvin that could be your pure special teams ace, which we know he is an all-pro at. And Wandale can be the person that, frankly, hey, we have a guy who can actually take the top off of a defense, and that's something that this team really has not had on a consistent basis.
Yeah, it is also worth pointing out this is a contract year for Marvin Mims. Mm-hmm. So maybe the Broncos want to move on and get some value because he hasn't really developed as a wide receiver as much as he brings on special teams. It's something to think about. If you want to get an upgrade in Rashid Shaheed, who in my opinion is a better wide receiver at this point, who brings very similar special teams value, I'd do it.
And again, I want to preface this before we continue on this. We are trying to talk about players that are actual options for Denver, right? Like, we're not sitting here talking about Justin Jefferson trade or a Jamar Chase trade. We're not doing that. But you also have to remember, this is before we find out whether Shaheed is going to get a franchise tag or a re-sign, or whether we figure out if Wandale Robinson is going to get franchise tagged or re-signed.
I would be
honestly, the Giants would be kind of stupid to let him go. But as of now, Wandale Robinson is a free agent, and I think he's a good fit in Denver. And I think he's a viable option in Denver.
Something to consider here, too. If Wandale is signed, or anybody, and I don't mean just Wandale, anybody that has connections to Davis Webb, if he signs here for a multiple-year deal, it goes back to the previous conversation we just had. It might be something to kind of file away. Because the other side of this, too, is we have not hired a wide receiver coach. And
Ocho Cinco, that's who I want.
So that's the other side of this too, is like, I assume my prediction right now is it's going to end up being Ronald Curry. That's going to end up being our wide receiver coach. That's kind of like where I'm getting at. But I just think that when you look at it and for what things are worth, if they do end up having a new wide receiver coach who ends up having some chemistry or he knows of Davis Webb, I don't know. It at least gives a lot of credence, whether it's true or not, to the idea that maybe there's a little bit more of this play calling duties that maybe Davis actually can add some, flavor, maybe designing parts of his own offense.
Yeah. So obviously wide receiver is the juicy one to talk about. Everyone wants to talk about that. Honestly, I think running back is a little bit more important. My personal favorite pick out of the free agents would be Tyler Algier. But I really, 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 really want Denver to take Emmett Johnson in the draft. And we'll get into more draft stuff later, but I really, 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 really want Emmett Johnson to go to Denver. And he'll probably be like a late second, early third, mid-third round pick.
Wouldn't be surprised. Can I ask you, if you were drafting Emmett Johnson, what do you do with RJ Harvey at that point?
Well, Emmett Johnson and RJ Harvey do two different things.
I don't know. The only thing that's different about Emmett Johnson, he's a bit of a tougher runner between the tackles.
Right. Well, and I think RJ Harvey's and again, this isn't saying that RJ Harvey's not going to get better, right? Rookie year, of course. But when you look at RJ Harvey, you see that guy that's going to go out and get the screens. You see that guy that's going to get pitched to the outside, right? You get Emmett Johnson that's going to be able to run in between the tackles and can move and cut and do all the things that RJ Harvey was struggling with in the year. Then you get Tyler Algier, and he's kind of your bigger back, right? Like you can move him back and forth between running back, fullback. He can be your blocker, however you want to use him, right? It's kind of exciting. But then you have J.K. Dobbins, right? Like he's a free agent. But, and nothing against J.K. Dobbins, talent-wise off the chart, but he cannot stay healthy.
Right.
And I understand that it was a hip drop tackle that took him out, not his fault.
No.
But again, he's hurt again, year after year after year. And it's not that he's not good. He's just not there. Like, I'm not saying the running game, and I'm not saying the running game would have been perfect with him back, but good God, it would have looked better than it did in the playoffs with him there.
I don't know. That running game was really damn good in those 10 games that JK was healthy. And I would not be opposed to bringing him back, but he can't be the number one option. He just can't. Even if you were to bring back J.K. Dobbins, that shouldn't stop you from signing a back in free agency or drafting one, or even both for that matter.
Yeah.
I think that the Broncos are going to go in on somebody like Breece Hall. Hall's probably my number one target if he's available. I still think there's a chance the New York Jets retain him, but if he's available, that's target number one. Algier would be my next plan. I love Tyler Algier. He'd be a great fit in this offensive scheme. Rico Dowdle's another one. I think he'd be an excellent fit. Travis Etienne, I don't know, a little bit more redundant with RJ Harvey for me, but I could definitely see it. But my top three would probably be Breece Hall, Tyler Algier, or Rico Dowdle.
You know,
is Rico Dowdle the guy the starter though?
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
Rico actually kind of finds himself into a little bit above, but also the same tier as what, J.K. Dobbins was last year. I mean, he's pretty slept on. Like he's pretty slept on to a degree where he's not really
that offense for a few weeks there.
Yeah, he
literally carried it.
So I think that Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker should be your top two, dreams if you can. But I just think that we also have to have the world where, at least have the world where there's the possibility with $70 million or more cap space, the Seattle Seahawks at least do try and retain Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
At least the current rumor and the current rumblings right now are the Jets are stupidly going to be franchise tagging Breece Hall, which puts it at about a $14.5 million clip for the running back position, which is an absurd amount for, frankly, Breece Hall. So if that happens, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure I like the idea of going that route, because at that point when you're trading for him, you may or may not be giving up a first round pick and then paying the $14 million as a baseline for your new deal. I don't know if I like that either. So frankly, the one I struggle with the most is a player to a certain degree, like an Emmett Johnson, like a Wan'Dale Robinson, but like some of these players that are fits, but there's already some players in here that are kind of do some of the same thing. We just haven't seen it yet in its full capacity. That's where I'm at with Travis Etienne. I think if you're looking at it with this Broncos offense and with everything that they have, Travis Etienne, of all the players that are in free agency right now, might actually be the best seamless fit, like a glove fit for this team. But he's another one. He actually is from Clemson. Trevor Lawrence is from Clemson. They played together in Clemson. They're playing together finally with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've had a good year with the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's hard for me to see him leaving Jacksonville, especially knowing, the season that he just had. But if he does, schematically and from a fit perspective, Etienne just makes so much sense from a fit perspective as a player fit of ETN. The question is just, do you limit RJ Harvey's passing receiving snaps? Do you limit some of the rushing attempts from Travis Etienne? And then, because I think what would be very tempting is that, you could have a room where you could go Travis Etienne, RJ Harvey, and Mike Washington, in like the third or fourth round, a little bit later, or maybe even a Jonah Coleman if you're able to get there in the second, or maybe even a Jadarian Price, potentially into that, second, and maybe even, somewhere in that area. If you're able to really like the idea of maybe having a little bit more of a explosive skill set of two running backs of Harvey and Etienne, I could probably get on board with that. With how good Harvey was as a receiving back, and then you can basically bring a version of that, like a super soldier serum of that, to this offense with Harvey. It'd be a good teaching tool for him going forward. So I love the idea of ETN. It's just that I don't know if I'm on board with it just from the how could it be able to work from a Harvey and ETN standpoint. But I won't say no to an idea like that. Rico, I don't know. Algier is the fascinating one because he found himself in the NFL version of, basically what Roshan Johnson was to Bijan before Bijan came to the NFL, to where it's like, is he really valuable as a starting running back? Well, he did have 1,000 yards before Bijan came in, right? He did have 1,000 yards, so he at least has that on his ledger. He doesn't fumble all that much either. But also a lot of that ends up coming because of the workload and everything that he had in Atlanta, right? And also the cost efficiency that he could probably bring you. So he also kind of, puts forth that maybe how high you want to sign him could dictate maybe you want to add maybe a J.K. Dobbins a little bit later. I would be actually in favor of a Tyler Algier, J.K. Dobbins, and R.J. Harvey room with no one else. And I think of all my wishes in this running back room, I do not want, and look, I respect how hard Julio runs. I respect how hard Bidet has been at times in some of these screens. I want 3 running backs on this roster, and that's it. I want Tyler Algier or whoever. I want J.K. Dobbins and whoever, a draft pick, whatever, R.J. Harvey. I just, at the very most, I want 3 running backs on this team, not 4. 4 is excessive. 5 is excessive. Give me 3.
I mean, there's a great running back that was in, good Lord, that was in Dallas that we could probably make a trade for. Javonte Williams. We'll go get him and start it all back up again. No. So we went over a little bit of the roster, a little bit of the needs. Obviously, we will continue to dig into stuff on other episodes. As far as free agents, we'll break everything down free agent wise. We'll break down contracts with cap space and offensive linemen and all kinds of stuff. We'll get into all that as we go. Today was just kind of a catch up and these are the issues, these are players that we like, but we'll break it down more as we go. But we do want to thank everybody for joining us in the chat tonight. I have one more question and then we're done. Are there any playoff teams from this year that will not be in the playoffs next year?
Hot take, New England Patriots.
I was going to say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I got another one, Chicago Bears.
I got the Panthers too.
That's a very good one as well.
I think Panthers actually might be the most obvious one.
Yeah, of course.
Honestly,
Especially if the Bucs get their stuff together in that division, or Atlanta.
I think I'm going to throw the Jags in there too.
I don't know. I think the Jags are in pretty good shape. I don't trust Caleb Williams for the Bears.
He's average at best.
What's that?
He's average at best.
I mean, he has incredible, explosive, highlight level plays, but he does not have the down-to-down consistency.
Like once or twice in the fourth quarter. Yeah,
exactly.
I take those out. He's that average quarterback.
I think he's had his one season Mitch Trubisky type arc, and then he's going to go back to being a middling quarterback. I strongly believe that. And then what was the other team I said?
Steelers too, out.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty obvious.
You said Patriots?
Yeah, and then Patriots, their roster is not good. it's not good. And based on reports coming out of New England, they aren't going to make very many efforts to fix said roster. So,
don't they have massive cap space?
yeah, and I don't think they're going to spend the money, which is dumb.
But Houston's another one.
Yeah, Houston too. I don't know, man. I think CJ Stroud's going to have a bounce back year next year. People forget just how good CJ Stroud was his rookie year and how good he was even last year. CJ Stroud is a good quarterback who had a bad stretch. He's going to bounce back this year.
They just got to do the smart thing and build around him with that offensive line, though.
Yes, for the love of God.
They can't sit on their hands and not give him some offensive line, or frankly have offensive line. You know.
So if we go 4 teams, we'll say Patriots aren't getting in.
Mm-hmm.
Steelers.
I actually have a take that I think it's not even. It may be playoffs related, but it's also relative to the Patriots, and that's Drake May won't be seeing the Super Bowl for quite some time.
I agree. I think that's going to be Drake May's only Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. That's my take. I'm going a bit further. I'm saying I don't think Drake May sniffs a Super Bowl for at least 5 more years.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And it's not going to be because of him. It's going to be because of the Patriots organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did talk about nose tackle a little bit there, Jack. Yeah. I did.
Well, and again, we'll dive into everything a whole lot more the closer we get to the draft, the closer we get to free agency, while free agency is going on. We're just not going to break it down tonight because I don't want to be here for 4 hours.
Yep. Well, and honorable mention here, they didn't make the playoffs this year, but I don't think they're making it again next year either, and that's the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah.
Ooh, even with Daniel Jones back?
Nope. Coming off the Achilles, he's not going to be the same dude. I don't think he's going to be a bad quarterback, but he's not going to be that quarterback who elevated their roster at the beginning of the year. He's going to look more like the Daniel Jones we saw in the Kansas City game, the Houston game, and then the Jacksonville game that he got hurt. He's going to look like the Daniel Jones who was playing on a broken leg for 3 games.
Yeah, the other one is it's just the other to the point is like it's just really hard to actually see a year that doesn't involve at least 1 or 2 of a Mahomes, an Allen, a Lamar, and a Burrow. So like that's just the other side of it too. Like when we were having this conversation, it's just impossible to not have an open year like this. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of people, Bronco fans, ourselves included, you see us crying in a corner or in our shower with the water on because we just felt like, that was our year. Because we, and why it was a possible Super Bowl year. I will say this though. I will say to type on our beginning conversation, Mike, when you asked about do we feel like the Broncos actually win the Super Bowl? I will say this though. This was probably what brings it is this was probably our best year to win a Super Bowl. And that's probably one of the reasons why it also stings. But it's also not done. So that best year to win could end up being one where they still win one down the line, right? Because we always say so often about what could have happened in that 2012 year? The 2012 year where the Broncos should have gone to the Super Bowl, and then by a shortened arm length of Raheem Morris.
That was our best team in the Peyton Manning era as far as I'm concerned. And
really?
I think so. From top to bottom, that roster was loaded.
Better than 2013?
Yes. They were a better roster. They had a better defense.
The Seahawks got to prove that why the 2013 team wasn't.
Because Denver didn't have depth in 2013. They could have withstood the injuries they had in 2013, in 2012, but that following year they did not have the same quality of depth.
Okay, so let's flip it to the other side. You take the Bears out. Who goes in? Detroit? Or do you think Minnesota goes back after Kirk Cousins and turns it around and they get
I do think Minnesota has a better year.
Yeah, I think Minnesota has a better year because I think they go get Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, can that guy just leave?
I think Minnesota's going to get Aaron Rodgers. He's going to complete the Brett Favre arc -1 quick stop in Pittsburgh. It's got to happen. He wants to go there, and I think he could elevate that roster enough. So, yeah, I think Minnesota's got a good chance, but you can't bet against Detroit bouncing back. With a healthy team, they're still the best roster in that division. They've got the best coach in that division, and that includes Ben Johnson and Kevin O'Connell.
By the way, I've been hearing just the rumblings, or seeing some rumblings within some social media. Another trade target the Broncos could target that makes a ton of sense is the guy who wears number 5 for the Detroit Lions.
Yes.
Montgomery?
Yes. Because there are some rumblings coming out of Detroit that he might get released. And if there's a team that Detroit might be willing to do some business with to recoup some assets for that potential release,
I said it.
could very well be Denver.
All right, well, we'll get into that in a different show because
Sure, yeah, we're almost an hour and a half.
I gotta go to bed.
Mainly time here.
No, you don't. No, you don't need to go to bed.
Yes, I do. I'm old. I'm 40 now. I don't have a 3 in front of my number.
And he's an hour ahead of us, Cam.
Yeah, I'm an hour ahead of you, jerk.
It's only 9:30.
Still, my kid's got to go to bed.
He's a boomer. He's got to go to bed by 10.
I am a millennial. Thank you. I'm not a boomer. All right, we want to thank everybody for joining us in the chat. It's been a fun show. Even though we didn't know if people were going to join us or not, because YouTube's stupid, we want to thank everybody for joining us. Anyways, make sure you head on over to the MHRT Network YouTube page. Hit that like, subscribe, thumbs up, and that join button. We have many different shows on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The neighborhood will be back if the Avs make the playoffs. So make sure you check that out. Shut your face. I was going to promo your show, but now I'm not going to. No. Make sure you also head on over to Broncos Syndicate, hosted by Gage Madrid. Hit that like, subscribe, thumbs up, and hit the join button. One of the shows that we have that is, see, you're yawning, so you know it's time to go. One of the shows we have on Wednesday is mainly Broncos, hosted by Cameron Parker. So make sure you check that show out. And again, we want to thank you all for joining us. It's been a great night. Mo Badson. It's been a great night. We love the Broncos. We love Broncos country. We'll see you guys later. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up.